Gaggle challenge and, if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Samueli. With me today, of course, is co-founder of the Gaggle, Peter Lavelle, and we are doing our regular Monday afternoon
our time
on the East Coast of the United States. It's crack of dawn. Well, 10 a.m. It depends on
dawn. Come on. I get up at 5 o'clock in the morning every day. Okay, that's the crack.
Sometimes 10 a.m. sounds like crack of dawn. But anyway,
welcome. You're so nocturnal, George. Okay.
Yes, I am.
George and I agree on a lot of things, but I live in the day. George lives in the night.
Yeah, I do have difficulties with the early rising, the early in the morning rising. That's a tough one.
Except for on Sunday.
Exactly. It's very tough. But anyway, so we have two big news items to discuss. Yesterday we discussed Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban's interview with the Swiss magazine Weltwoche, in which he talked about his peace ambitions. And then he said in that interview, enigmatically, "Oh, I've got a few surprises coming up." And of course, he didn't release what that surprise was. And now we find out the surprise was he made a trip to Beijing, which is quite a long flight. It's not not something you can just head off to the local cafe. It's a big trip. So he was in Beijing today, again discussing obviously discussing EU-China relations, but they also talked about Ukraine. So that's one.
And where? But he's not done yet. Where's it going next?
That's a very good question. I mean, I imagine he's going to show up in the meeting, the NATO summit in Washington, which starts tomorrow. It's a 3-day powwow.
3-day circle jerk. Okay.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of excellent food and wine. Yeah. I mean, then it's going to be.
And if you got that catering contract, you're going to the bank.
Yeah. When you think of it, because you've got 32 delegations. And those are delegations. So you have the foreign ministers, you have the prime minister, you have the defense minister, then you have the entourage, all the hangers on. So can you imagine just how many people you have to cater for? I mean, that's a big item. It's very interesting that how little discussion there is for the amount of money that is spent on all these conferences, all the catering, because when you add it all up, that's a lot of money for a lot of very pointless meetings. You can have all these meetings on Zoom and so on. Why do you need to gather everybody together and all their entourage? I mean, this is a massively expensive catering enterprise, but no one really ever discusses this, and what an absolute waste of public money, because there are so many more of these junkets than there used to be. I mean, they're not, all these endless kinds of,
Well, just think about it. NATO has, foreign ministers, defense ministers, okay, information ministers.
Yes.
They probably have the trans ministers,
yes.
And they have all the other ministers, okay, and then they have their sub ministers. So this is around the clock thing. It's big. It's serious business, George.
It's a very, very serious. And then you've got all these other things. You've got your G7s, and then you've got your G20s. But then you also have all the kinds of different forums. And you have the forums, and you go to these, and all of these, a lot of empty talk, but a lot of meals that have to be provided. You have breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I mean, there's a lot of, and then you got all the mini.
You get those coffee breaks, George. That's where the real business goes on. Okay? Those coffee breaks.
The coffee breaks. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's just an amazing piece of public expenditure. But anyway,
and of course, everyone's anticipating the public oratory of Joe Biden.
Of Joe Biden, it'll be very stirring. His words will be soaring.
Silver tongue. Okay. I just wonder if he'll think he's at the UN, or he's back in the U.S. Senate, or maybe even the Roman Senate, because I think he served in the Roman Senate.
I think he did. It's very interesting. I mean, what exactly he's going to come up with, because they'll provide him with a speech. But chances are that when they start the toast, because they're going to have to toast, because this is the 75th anniversary, so there's going to be some toasting going on. And what the hell is going to come up with? Absolutely free associational thinking will come out.
Well, depending on the drug cocktail they give him, I don't know, a little bit of champagne, it could set something off, some kind of change.
Definitely.
Rest assured, he will be wearing diapers. Absolutely. Okay. Absolutely. If there's going to be any kind of, alcohol involved, okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Even Joe, I'd stay away from the coffee too. Okay, that's
yeah. No, so, if you got a heavy pudding after your meal. Yeah.
Well, they'll have an emergency exit. Okay? We need an extract right now. Okay?
Yes. But the other big news item was the French election, which, obviously in the media coverage, fantastic victory for the left, and much like we had the sort of the Keir Starmer, big win and so on. But again, once you get down to the actual numbers, much like as in the UK election, there really isn't, the outcome really has nothing to do with the desires of the French people anymore. The outcome had anything to do with the desires of the British people. So just want to show, first of all, a Politico article.
I saw this. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Where are we? All right. Let's see what's going on here. So I'm going to try and do the sharing. Yeah. This is always exciting. We never know whether it's going to work. Did it work?
Not yet, but I'm still,
Can you see anything?
I don't see anything yet.
All right, so it obviously hasn't worked. So let's try again. And
okay. In the meantime, hi Meg, hi Tony.
Yes.
Iron Can.
Yeah. Okay. So for some reason, I was looking forward to. No, that's not it. I was looking forward to sharing this, but for some reason, it's not. Let's see. Maybe this will.
In the meantime, Skippy is taking a nap on my lap. Okay.
All right. Oh, he is.
Yeah, because he's terrorized by Apple, so he looks for refuge, and my lap is refuge.
Well, it's looking like it's going to be, for some reason, the sharing.
No sharing for you, George.
No sharing, no sharing. It's.
No, I was watching a podcast earlier today, and they just couldn't get on YouTube. It just didn't get out.
Yeah,
that happened to us once. Okay. So.
Yeah, but the basic thing that it showed was that the National Front, which I think won around 37% of the vote, but I think only ended up with something like 22% of the seats. And in fact, the National Front, not the National Front, the National Rally, as it's now called, the National Rally was the biggest party in terms of its vote. So it was the biggest party. So in a way, the polls weren't wholly wrong. It did come out the number one in terms of the popular support. What happened was these tactical alliances proved to be very successful, and so I think something like 230. I can't remember the exact number. 230 candidates withdrew between the first and the second round, and so therefore essentially it was the National Rally versus someone else, and that someone else prevailed. The drawback is that, of course, you now have a parliamentary assembly that really isn't about anything. I mean, you prevailed, you kept the National Rally out. That what you're against, but what are you for? What's your agenda?
And the temporary array assembled against the National Rally, George, it started fraying seconds after the vote was counted. Okay, so George is absolutely right. This is a mishmash. There's no coherence here, but Politico thinks this is Macron's magnificent genius. Okay,
Right.
I mean, Politico. God, these people are so insufferable. Oh my God.
Right.
You know what Politico is really good for? It's good for us because, I mean, every day they have really good material to work with. Just unbelievable. Okay. During most of the Ukraine conflict, Ukraine's been winning, according to Politico. Okay. They basically get every single foreign policy story wrong.
Yep.
Just about.
Yep. No, that's exactly right. So now, Macron, the genius. But you have a problem, which is that nobody will be able to form a government because, the left is long way short, more than 100 votes short of an absolute majority in parliament. And then if you say, okay, well, maybe they can form a coalition with Macron's ensemble, but they're not going to do it because Macron and his people have absolutely ruled out dealing with Mélenchon. They said no way, because they detest Mélenchon even more than they detest the National Rally.
I was just about to say this ensemble they got together. They hate the National Rally. Yep, absolutely, but they hate Macron just as much.
That's right. Exactly. And so they got the problem there that how are you going to put together this even if you got the left, even if you were able to put the left could work together, which is very dubious because they detest Mélenchon, you're well short of the absolute majority, so you got the situation where Macron can presumably just simply kind of create a government out of thin air. You just bring in a government of technocrats and academics. You bring in this guy, Jean-Claude Trichet, former European Central Bank. He's a sort of Mario Draghi type, but only he's older than Draghi. And then you could bring in some university professors and so on. Well, how is that in any way a victory for democracy? It's not, but they're not going to be able to cobble together anything out of this mishmash in the assembly.
Yeah, I saw, I as usual, I peruse the mainstream, and I was looking for a video, and of course the narration is jubilant in Paris. They're so happy. Whoever is the newsreader or presenter or correspondent or whatever. But George is right. George always goes forensically. Okay. This was a wipeout for French politics, okay? And that's not a good thing, okay? No. Because no one is going to be satisfied. See, technically, you can look, because of its arcane way of counting votes, you have this picture, but it doesn't reflect reality, and it doesn't reflect how the election has just codified dysfunction.
Yes.
But that's a good thing. But that's a good thing because the National Rally isn't there.
Yes, that was the only thing.
Dealing with children.
Yes, exactly. So last week on June the 30th, when the National Rally came in first, in that first round of the vote, the media focused on the huge protest at the Place de la République, and these protests, everybody's very angry. The fact that it ended up in rioting, no one cared about that. Essentially, you're protesting an election result, which is kind of ridiculous by itself. Election is an election. You can't just protest an election result. But now, 1 week later, you're back in the Place de la République, and this is fantastic, and all these young people celebrating. And celebrating what? They're not going to form a government. There's no way that anyone's going to form a government with Mélenchon, and you don't have anything like a vote that's going to pick up. Now, they may just cobble together something or other and rule on an ad hoc basis, so that this piece of legislation, that piece of legislation, and maybe they can survive votes of no confidence. There's nothing much you can do for about 12 months. You can't have an election, according to the French Constitution, for another 12 months. but it's hard to see how this continues until 2027 when Macron steps down. So that's 3 years. You can't have 3 years of this.
But another thing, again, if you just take away your ideological blinders, everyone, okay, and look at the result and look at a pattern. National Rally is doing better and better and better. Okay, it's almost it's like it's kind of like a glacier. Okay, I mean you look at it for 15 minutes or 15 hours, maybe 15 days, it doesn't move. But if you look at it over a course of time, it's a huge block of ice that's making its way. And you know what, George? Nothing's going to stop it.
I don't think so, because you're absolutely right. I think that 88 representatives in 2022. I think it's up to 142 now. Moreover, you know, you're going to have the 2027, the presidential election. I mean, Marine Le Pen will run, and this time you won't be able to do this tactical voting. I mean, because it's going to be the top two go through, and very hard to see how you can keep, you know, Le Pen out of the top two. So it'll be Le Pen versus somebody else. And I don't know who the somebody else is. I mean, maybe they'll cobble together somebody. Invent a person the way Macron was invented out of no one had ever heard of him until the election.
But another thing that, again, if you have to just, you know, take a view from 30,000 feet, is that, for better or worse, depending on how your point of view, obviously, but everyone, the National Rally has gone mainstream. Have you noticed?
Yeah,
it's a mainstream party now.
Yeah.
Again, see, if you look at, you micromanage everything, or go with, you know, is Macron's wife a man and all? I mean, I could care less about these things. I don't understand why people even discuss it. I really don't. But have you noticed? Have you noticed that Le Pen's father's party, when he's established it, and look at today? Now that's a very interesting evolution. You could disagree with it. I have no problem with that. But this is a continuum that there is no other element in French politics that can match it.
No,
looking at the bigger picture.
Right. Yeah, that's right. Here's Jonathan says here that the July 4th British election and the sham second round election in France were Pyrrhic victories that will be quickly exposed as hollow. This might just finally propel Le Pen's election to the presidency in 2027. As I say, I think that's quite likely, because, you know, it'll obviously, you know, a lot of people are going to feel very dissatisfied with this tactical voting, whereby, you know, you've got the party that won the most votes comes in third, and you know, we've kept them out. But you know, you've done it by essentially, you know, rigging the system. So, I do think that, you know, when it becomes, you know, National Rally versus somebody else, there's going to be a different.
I'm not convinced. It's, you know, this is way early days. I'm not convinced that Le Pen will be the candidate. Okay. Maybe that's one of the things I don't like about the National Rally. I think that Le Pen should, you know, she can be an important person behind the, you know, the behind the scenes, and advisor, you know, someone that has cultivated and curated the party. But I really think that, you know, she's had her chance, you know. If she runs in 27, this is the fourth attempt?
This is the third attempt. I wasn't sure whether it's the third or the fourth, but I think it'll be her third attempt. I mean,
this Jordan guy, I mean, you know, I know a smattering of French, but, you know, I watched a couple of speeches he made. Good delivery. Yeah.
He is good. That's right. But there is still the problem of age. However, you know, Macron was pretty young, so Bardella wouldn't be much younger than Macron was in 2017. The prime minister, the current Attal,
they all look like boys to me.
Attal does. I mean, he just looks like, you know, if you put him in sort of shorts, you know, and a blazer, you think he's just a schoolboy. I mean,
these are boys in suits. Okay. Okay. Right. You know, I don't want to sound too radical here, but let's tear a page from 2016. what do you have to lose?
Right. No,
I think we're getting to that position right now.
I think so. I absolutely think so, because as in Great Britain, I don't think that this whatever you have now is going to be able to address France's problems. And France has got a lot of problems, and it's hard to see how you're going to get any kind of a coalition government out of this. So this is going to be the Mario Draghi option. And I don't think that's going to address anything any more than Mario Draghi achieved anything in Italy. So yeah, I mean, it's like essentially France has just voted for same old, same old. Oh, but at least we kept out the national rally. Well, you can't keep doing this. I mean, there's a point at which you're just getting diminishing returns. I mean, they're doing this now in Germany. We can keep doing it for election cycle after election cycle, but at some point, it's not going to work anymore.
Well, I mean, I'm glad you brought up Germany. I mean, I look at the German press, obviously, like Deutsche Welle and stuff, which I hate. But anyway, but look at the alternative for Germany. I mean, the vilification, the attacks, and the lawfare against this party.
Right. Yes.
And they still can't stop it. It's a juggernaut. It's a juggernaut.
Right.
It's the only thing. I mean, George and I have talked about this at great length. I mean, it's not impossible. It could even be likely that they will disbar this party.
I think so. I mean, today was a court ruling. A German appellate court has ruled that AfD members are not allowed to own guns. So again, which is kind of an amazing thing. You're a law-abiding citizen. You've done nothing wrong. You never committed any crime, or you can't own a gun because you're a member of the AfD, because the German security services have decided that you are a threat to whatever democracy or the constitutional order. So apparently the German security services get to make this decision.
Well, this is not the first time in German history that the organs of the state determine the level of civil liberties of citizens.
No. That's the thing.
Habits, George. I thought they had kicked it. I thought rehab had worked. I thought rehab had worked. It was it was put on global display. The Germans have rehabbed themselves.
That's right, exactly. The new Germany. Yeah, let's say. And so let's take a look at some points people are making on locals.
You look at the question real quick. I'm going to get a
little
bit of water.
So Cynthia, thank you very much, Cynthia. Always very appreciate your generosity. So Cynthia says, it seems like the only way for the US to back out of Ukraine without losing face, of course, is to just say that the Ukrainians lost the war, not us. Oh, sure, I know it's a lie, but the entire political establishment always gets away with lying to us. So shouldn't they also be able to get away with lying to us about this as well? Plus, they've got plenty of spin meisters inside the DC Beltway, fully capable of spinning the lie for them. Hollywood could also help with that too. Well, I think that's a fair point. You can do that, the sort of the unworthy ally kind of argument. It was the South Vietnamese that failed. The problem, I think, in this case is that because the United States has so explicitly used Ukraine as a sledgehammer to beat Russia, that to admit failure, to admit defeat, is essentially to admit that Russia has won. And for the United States to admit that it has lost to Russia, I think would be absolutely catastrophic for America's elites. So I don't think they can quite do what they did in South Vietnam and just simply shrug their shoulders and walk away. So that's why I think they just they'll continue to commit themselves to such a war that cannot be won. But they don't care about essentially winning the war. They care just about hurting and debilitating Russia.
Well, I said a long time ago that we'll eventually come across the narrative. Well, they didn't make it. The Russians didn't make it to Paris. We won. Okay, it's something like. I think I have George and I have grappled with this for the whole time of
Yep.
this part of the conflict. There's too much at stake. There's too much hubris at stake. Committing such vast resources and really turning your foreign policy upside down. This is something that's going to be very difficult to grapple with. George and I don't have the solution. The one thing that I've been looking at very closely and looking at the changes going on in Zelensky's regime. See, that's the weak link right there. There has been reports, I don't know if they're true or not. There was some kind of attempt at forcing Zelensky out, taking over parliament. I mean, he could take over the Rada, but power doesn't emanate from the Rada. Okay, so I mean, go ahead and take the building if you want, but it's not going to do anything. Okay, because Zelensky has centralized, or his handlers, the CIA, MI6, have just centralized all power around him, right, not around institutions, about individuals. Okay, so having that kind of coup d'etat doesn't really make any sense. Obviously, what would make sense is if there was a revolt within the military. But that's a bit dodgy as well. So
it's very dodgy because the Americans and the NATO's essentially are committed to Zelensky. So any attempt to overthrow Zelensky would immediately come into conflict with the United States and NATO. Now, the case of DM was very different in South Vietnam, because there it was the Americans who pushed for the overthrow of DM. So the Americans were actually backing the coup, and which led to the murder of DM. And the Americans were happy with this. But in this case, I don't see the Americans pushing an alternative leadership. So if a bunch of
I'm not saying
generals were said, oh well, Zelensky, we want him gone,
saying...
Americans are not going to recognize it.
Okay, okay, those are two different things here. Okay, if there were some kind of coup within Ukraine, within the Zelensky regime, I agree with George. I don't think that the U.S. would necessarily recognize it. Would probably be against it. But it depends on what kind of alternatives are on the ground as well. It's kind of like the Joe Biden story. There's no good ending here. Okay, just
right.
Like the Joe Biden, this is also in that category. There's no good ending here for anybody. But the ending will come. And I think that George and I, as a special service to our viewers, we're going to keep our finger on the pulse here. You have to understand what Russia wants. Does it want the defeat of Ukraine? Well, that's part of what they want. What they want, and always, this is a post-it you put right next to your computer, is that Russia wants to change the security architecture of Europe. It's not about Zelensky. They don't care about Zelensky. It's not, taking Kiev. They don't care about Kiev. Okay, and it's really not much about Ukraine as well. It's about the entire security structure of what is called the North Atlantic space that covers much more than the North Atlantic. Okay, right. This is what Russia's focused on. If you, again, Putin's speeches, go to Kremlin.ru. You can get them all. They're translated very well in very good English. Right. Okay, I mean, you can read it. You can completely disagree with it. That's okay. But that's a point of view, and it has been coherent, consistently coherent. If you want to understand what does Putin want, go there, because people in Washington, they say no, we're not going to listen to it. Close our ears. No, they're like children and run away.
No, I agree. I agree. That is Russia's ultimate goal. The problem is, how do you get an agreement that NATO and Ukraine won't renege on? I mean, in other words, maybe they'll agree. Okay, we won't have Ukraine in NATO for the next 20, 30 years, whatever. And I don't think it'll be that explicit. But let's say there's a peace conference, and they'll talk about security, a kind of a Helsinki 2.0. There'll still be a question. Okay, well, once the next president's out of the way and we got somebody new, we know the way Washington in particular works. It's going to be a drumbeat that's just going to go on and on and on. All the Lindsey Grahams and everybody, they're going to keep.
Who lost Ukraine?
Exactly, and we got to keep doing. They'll be flying. These congressional delegations will be flying into Kiev month after month after month. Promising. We can't let Putin win. We can't let Putin win. We got to keep doing. I mean, this is what they were doing starting in 2014. It's like, they just moved to undermining Minsk. That's right. And there was Lindsey Graham there all the time, planning this a war in Ukraine. So that's really the problem: is how do you get some kind of a security architecture when your interlocutors have no intention of keeping their word? I mean, that's it. They just know they just say, okay, we'll say, and then we'll change. We'll say something different in 2 years' time.
See, the problem is that this whole conflict is about the current security structure in Europe. Okay, Russia is dissatisfied with it. I don't want to waste our time here. How many times they've said it? Okay, it's so many times George and I would make this into a telethon. Okay, but Washington and London, Brussels, it's just fine. The security arrangement is just fine. You know why? Because the security arrangement is based on two fundamental pillars. It's a security arrangement against Russia, and it's a security arrangement without Russia.
Right.
That's hunky-dory with these guys. That's been the plan all along.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Absolutely agree. And it began in 1991. They just didn't hesitate. They moved right away. When they started that whole Partnership for Peace program, it was always a lie. It was always a lie that they tried to fob Russia off. Oh, it's a partnership for peace. That's all. This was always a step-by-step process.
We'll make a little NATO Russia count.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. And that's it. And they think, oh, this is great. So we continue to expand. And we essentially continue to surround Russia with hostile states that are part of our military alliance. And if Russia doesn't like it, well, they're going to have to put up with it because
they did for a long time.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
We have a question here from James H. Here. Does George think? I can give the answer, I suppose, for George. Does George think Ukraine will join NATO this week at the birthday bash? Go ahead, George.
Well, I don't think it's going to. I think they're going to make. I think they're going to try and cobble together some verbiage which has to be more than what they promised in Vilnius, but less than full membership. I think that they haven't got the agreement of all NATO member states for full membership. So, but they're going to come up with, well, it's a little, not quite full membership, but we're going to have a NATO civilian commander inside Ukraine, and we're going to have a training base, a NATO training base in Germany, and we're gonna have all sorts of bilateral agreements, and we're going to pour a lot more weaponry, but NATO's not a party to the conflict.
That's right. NATO will have a stationary office in Kiev.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
The stationary. I think janitorial services could be run out of Kiev. Maybe a carpool. Who knows? Okay. They'll do this little sprinkling of little organizations. Okay.
Yes.
Yes. But no NATO flags. Okay.
No, we're not there.
I mean, we're there, but we're not there. Okay.
That's right. Exactly. Yes.
We're there, but we're not there. Okay.
I would love one day if for one of those, potatoes that sit in those press conferences of Stoltenberg to ask him, well, what would make NATO a party to the conflict? Just explain to us. You say it's not a party. What conditions would NATO have to meet to make it a party to the conflict? Because whatever NATO does, you keep saying we're not a party to the conflict. Okay, what would do it? What would cross the line? And now you would say NATO is a party to the conflict. Because I still don't get it. I don't know how, when you spell out all these things you're going to have, and you say NATO is going to be basically in charge of running the Ukraine military operation. I mean, NATO's running the Ukraine's military. How is it not a party to the conflict?
I'd like to point out to everybody, yesterday, George and I had a fascinating conversation with Alistair Crook. And George and Alistair had a very interesting exchange. I think one of the most important parts of our podcast yesterday, that Trump said that he would resolve the conflict before he was inaugurated. Now, that's a very interesting comment, okay? Because basically, how does this all end? That's the big question. But if Trump is to return to the White House, I think all three of us were in agreement is that he doesn't want Biden's war. Okay.
Right.
He doesn't want Biden's war. He's
No.
got other things to do. Okay.
Right.
He didn't start this thing. Biden, when he was vice president, kicked
Right.
this whole thing off. Okay.
Right.
So you can, file that away under interesting.
I think it's interesting, but and I think I raised with Alistair the question, and which I don't know the answer to, that well, what about let's think of what Trump thinks, because Trump obviously doesn't want this hanging over his administration. On the other hand, does Trump want to go down in history as the man who lost Ukraine? I mean, because ultimately this has always been the problem with Trump, is that he kind of wants to have a foot in both camps. He wants to be the peacemaker. He's the one who doesn't start any wars, and he also wants to be the tough guy. The one who wants to really kick some ass. So here again, if he's told, well, if you basically pull the plug on Ukraine, you will be responsible for a victory for Russia, and you will go down in history as essentially a Russian stooge. Now, ridiculous argument, but nonetheless, Trump may be persuaded by that, and that's why. I mean, he does go around boasting. Well, I changed Obama's policy. He was sending pillowcases, and I started sending lethal weapons. So he was the one who started the dispatch of lethal weapons to Ukraine.
Yeah, I mean, just speaking of Trump, I think it's really quite interesting in foreign policy, but also in domestic policies. He's moving to the center. I mean, compared to 2016,
right.
He's moving to he may not be aware of it, but this is what Nixon did also,
right.
Okay? Moving to the center, because he's looking more and more moderate. Biden is just a mess. I mean, it's kind of confusing the political waters, because Trump is modulating his appeal to those that didn't like him in 2020, and saying, look at Biden, and I have this new set here. I have a new cocktail, and it's not working because people are not focusing on the policy differences. Okay, they're focusing on the mess known as Joe Biden.
Right. No, I absolutely agree, and I think that's what Trump is doing. Trump is, I think, now trying to coast. He thinks that the election is in the bag.
The less you say, the better you are.
Exactly, that's what he's doing. I think it's always a very dangerous strategy in any election to try to coast to victory. Think, hey, I've got this in the bag. As long as I don't say anything really outrageous, basically, I can just cruise.
Dewey 48.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's a dangerous one. I don't think that's the right thing to do. Because I think you want to spell out how are things going to be different? What is it you're going to do different? If you just say, wait, well, I'm mentally competent and he isn't, I don't think that's going to be enough.
That would be the strangest way to get the presidency.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Anyway, so thank you, Cynthia. Cynthia then has another question. I realize the odds of us getting out of Ukraine are a bit better under Trump than they are under Biden, all because it's Biden's war, not Trump's. But don't you think that the odds of that happening are even better under Trump, simply because he'll be a lame duck president? After all, lame ducks tend to feel freer to make decisions on their own with little to no fear of upsetting the apple cart. So, I mean, I think that's a fair point, and I think that would definitely be a consideration. But as I said, there's the other consideration. Trump will be thinking about the history books, and you think of all the American presidents, and they all thought about this, about Vietnam. Hey, I'm the one who's going to go down in history as the president who lost Vietnam. And remember, Nixon did think in '73, but well, maybe we can keep this show on the road. Probably they could have kept it on the road at least through to if Nixon had survived the second term. Probably nothing would have happened until he had already departed from the scene. But I think that's what Nixon. But Kennedy and Johnson, think, hey, look what happened to those people who were attacked as who lost China. And that was, a lot of people had their careers destroyed because of who lost China. You lost China to Mao, and they didn't want to say, who lost Vietnam? You're the one who lost Vietnam to the communists. So I think Trump may think along those like, hey, you lost it to Russia. America lost the war to Russia. Do you realize that you are the man who presided over American defeat to Russia? It's not a convincing argument, to us. It might be to Trump.
Yeah, but that's why Trump, that's why he wants to resolve this before the inauguration, because it technically will still be under Biden. And George and I, that's how George and I operate. Well, the economy was recovering before I was inaugurated, so I'm going to take credit for it. We don't do that. We're chronological. Nope, it wasn't during your term. Sorry, it's not yours. Okay. I think what Trump is going to be thinking about, George, is the composition of the Senate and who is going to control the House. Why do I say this? Because if the Democrats do well, down ticket, and again, this is all a mess right now, he's going to be impeached again. And he's going to have to look at the array of forces in the Senate. Okay. Now, if Trump wants to get out of Ukraine, Lindsey Graham will table the impeachment. Okay. Yeah. I mean, so he has to look at. I think obviously he has no interest in Ukraine. He thinks this is a waste of time, because it's not focused on him. Everything should be about Donald Trump. I'm your president. I'm your most favorite president. Okay. He doesn't want to get caught into somebody else's quagmire. That's not the way he operates. But because no one knows better than Donald Trump about impeachment. Okay. Right. If he's going to see the line, the constellation of stars, that there's even the remote possibility they're going to impeach him. He doesn't want it to be over Ukraine. Okay.
No, I agree. That's right. But at the same time, Trump, he's not Ron Paul. Ron Paul, he has a very distinct vision of the world. And while Trump has been able to mobilize these kinds of libertarians, Trump himself is not a libertarian. And I think in the case of like Julian Assange, why didn't he pardon Julian Assange? Obviously he was worried about the impeachment, the vote in the impeachment. But Assange was also not his type of person. He thought, if you say, hey, somebody tells him, Assange really endangered America's security. He's some radical computer hacker. And Trump thinks, well, what have I got in common with some radical computer hacker? I mean, it's so, it's quite easy for Trump to think, I don't know, I'm not one of them. I see myself as a sort of a Ronald Reagan-like figure. I don't have anything in common with now. So that's why I think it's, this is what Ron Paul would do, but Trump is not Ron Paul.
And Trump's the type of George is absolutely right. Who's Julian Assange to me? Okay, that's his attitude. Yeah. Unfortunately, because I think you should have a higher moral standard than that. But leave that aside. But another example is the United States recognized Israeli sovereignty over the Golan Heights. Well, why did Trump do that? Because there's no downside. You want it? Okay, it's not mine. You want to take it? I got nothing against it. I mean, that's the transactional nature of Trump. What's it to me? You want the embassy in Jerusalem? What's it to me? Yeah, that's
I agree. It's entirely entirely beneficial to him because he thinks, hey, I've got all this Zionist money pouring into my coffers. He needed all that Adelson money. And what's the downside? I don't even get, I might get the New York Times might do a tisk editorial. Well, I don't think America should break ranks with, the rest of the international community, but, hardly a vociferous condemnation. And so, he doesn't do it. I mean, if it's an easy thing to do, then and I think it was his Justice Department that issued the indictment against Julian Assange. He thought, okay, fine, fine, go ahead and do it. I don't care. So he doesn't have an ideological worldview. That's not how he thinks. So he doesn't think the way Biden and the people around Biden about the rules-based order and so on. He doesn't think like that. And dictators, democracy and dictatorship. He doesn't think along those lines. But I think he wants to see himself as a tough guy, and I think he wants to see America as a kind of a really tough, strong power. No one messes with America.
Yeah, but see, the best segue for him to do that is like on trade, something he knows something about. Okay,
that's right.
And so for me, George and I get a lot of levity out of how the Europeans are. The Trump might come back. Trump might come back. Okay?
Right.
It's like the seven dwarfs over there. Okay, but I mean, Trump is going to say, how can we become more competitive? Okay, all right. Biden crushed the Europeans. They're no longer a competitor. Good. Okay, what about who's that? See, that's all. He's all just transactional. Is it morally right? Are we, defending the Western civilization against it? He doesn't think in those terms. Okay.
Right. Exactly. He really doesn't, and that's why it's a complete mistake. Like, oh, he likes dictators. He doesn't like dictators.
He doesn't care.
He doesn't care. Exactly. I think, well, China, that's a big country, a big power. Are they screwing us over? Yeah, well, they're screwing us over. Well, we're going to screw them over. That's what it is. And then, again, Russia. Well, Russia's a big power. We have to deal with Russia. Hey, maybe we can use Russia against China. But he's going, but don't you know, these aren't democracies. He's not that way. That doesn't mean anything to him. I mean, it's just, it's just a matter of, who are the big players.
Well, I mean, Trump will look at a car. The Chinese are building some amazing cars. I don't know if Americans even are aware of this, but they're all over Moscow now, these Chinese cars. Trump would look at a car like that. He wouldn't care if it was made in an autocracy or a democracy.
Right.
He'd say, it's a pretty good car.
Right. That's right. Anyway, so now we have Summer Petrus says, regarding the abandoned meeting of the German Foreign Minister Frau Baerbock in Budapest, I fear it is harangued, delayed rather than dodged. I agree with you. I think that doubtless she will be in Washington for the NATO.
She's going to be pissed.
Actually, she's going to be pissed, but probably Orban will try to avoid having too many personal interactions.
I can just see this. I can just see this right now. See, Orban strikes me. I could be wrong. He could be a white wine guy, but I think he likes his beer. Okay, because he's kind of stout, a little bit.
He's a little stout, yes.
Little stout. So can you imagine in between the plenum sessions there, he gets himself a cold one, and here she comes. Oh shit! Here she comes. Okay, and she looks pissed.
She looks pissed.
And so here she goes. Here's the scene. I'm setting it up right now. So he's next to the table. He's like, get me a cold one. Okay, so he gets a cold one. Okay. Get me a half liter, okay, a big one, okay. And so she's coming up, she's moving, you can see the steam coming out of her ear. She's so pissed, okay. So he opens up that big neck of his and he pulls most of it down, Why not all of it?
Yes.
This is a trick. So she's coming up, she gets right in front of him and says, "Can you hold my beer?" And he takes them off.
Hold my beer.
Hold my beer.
No, that's probably.
I don't know what she drinks. I don't know these green people. The problem is with these green people, they probably don't drink at all.
Yeah, I would have thought.
Part of the problem.
Yeah, I would have thought she's a kind of probably a vegetable juice type person. Can you mix one of these vegetable juice with in one of those juicers. Yeah, I don't.
It's probably
here as a
color. It's some
yeah.
In one of those see-through thermoses.
Yeah. That's
one in her bag.
Yes. But I think Orban is he likes his beer. It looks to me like he likes a cold one. Anyway, Summer Petrus says, especially if the Hungarian leadership goes on to meet with the former president and presidential candidate Trump. Yeah, I don't know whether he has a meeting with Trump scheduled. I mean, he'll be in Washington, so I don't know whether Trump is planning a visit to Washington. But who knows? Orban might make a trip down to Mar-a-Lago and chat with Trump. Which will be interesting if he does do that.
Well, you can, Mar-a-Lago. You can bet there's a good bar down there.
Yeah, I think so. That looks.
They look well. They do a little background stuff, and
Yeah,
behind the
yeah, yeah.
scenes. They say, Victor, what are you drinking? And he's probably, I like this good Austrian beer, or I got my problems with Bitterbach, but they got good beer. Can you get a case for me? Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
That's how things get done.
That's it. Yes, yeah, yeah. He's a very energetic person. I mean, again, he looks, obviously he's kind of overweight, but he's obviously very energetic. I mean, we saw him yesterday. He was in that interview where he seemed quite animated, and then he's off to China. I mean, and then from China, he's flying to DC. He doesn't sleep very much. So
Talking about punching above your weight. Wow.
Yeah, yeah. Anyway, Jonathan asked, once Trump is back in office, if he has the fortitude and rational-minded people in his circle, which has never been a guarantee, he should prohibit any and all senators or representatives who want to travel to Ukraine to make trouble. Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting thing. I mean, we have that whole thing about the Logan Act, which is uniquely used against Trump, with that ridiculous thing with Michael Flynn. So I mean, you should start.
It had never been used
Logan
before.
Act, the president makes foreign policy, but
no, the president can't bar any Congress people.
Yeah, I don't think so. Well, he obviously can't, because it basically there's the First Amendment. You have a First Amendment right to go anywhere and to talk to anyone. I mean, that's why the whole Logan Act thing was so absolutely ridiculous, and is wheeling that nonsensical piece of legislation from 200 years, and they try to use it against Trump, where it's obviously a violation of the First Amendment. I mean, anyone can go anywhere and talk to anyone. So,
except for Michael Flynn.
Except for Michael Flynn. Yeah. And so anyway, Lynn, 1995. Nice to see you again, Lynn. The people in Washington are so out of touch with the American citizens' concerns. I talk to many people, and we are tired of sending money abroad when the average citizen can't afford groceries. No one cares about NATO except the political elite.
Yeah.
With alternative sources like the Gaggle, people see through the lies. I hope so.
Well, I mean, George, I saw a fragment. I didn't watch the whole thing. I don't need to see anything more about Joe Biden, but I saw snippets of the Stephanopoulos interview. He said, "I expanded NATO." Well, who the hell gives a rat's ass?
Yeah.
In flyover country, NATO.
Yeah.
What's that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes. What's interesting now is, is that there is now more, I think, criticism of NATO. I mean, it's taken a long time. I mean, it used to be that criticism of NATO was well, in America there wasn't any criticism of NATO other than the freeloaders, which is still the Europeans who are getting a free ride. But in Europe it was limited to the left. Only the political left, the Labour Party left, was perennially against NATO. You had the French communists were against NATO, and then when the Italian communists started becoming domesticated, because they were hungry for power, in the 1960s and 70s, they dropped their opposition to NATO. I mean, they didn't, in order to get to power, we'll think about withdrawing from NATO. But it was limited. I mean, it was the right generally in Europe supported NATO. I think that's gradually changing, but it's taking a long time, and I think it's just it's going to involve a lot of whacking people over the head to realize that this is a horrible organization. It has nothing to do with security. It's endangering everyone's lives, and you have to pull out. You have to withdraw from this. And it's not just Ukraine. If we just resolve the Ukraine problem, but otherwise NATO is great. No, NATO is not great. It's not just Ukraine. It's been it's a long track record of being an absolute disaster.
We have the mess in Ukraine because of NATO. Okay,
right.
This organization should have been shut down in 1991. Okay, and have a a demilitarized zone from the Russian border to the German border. You know why, everybody? Because look at hundreds of years of history. Okay, it all goes back to that part. Why don't we just shut it down, freeze it? Nobody puts any military hardware there. Go your own way, everybody. Okay, it's
you're right.
Again, you know, we have this this situation where you have a security arrangement without Russia and against Russia. That's why we have this problem.
Yeah, that's right. And what's interesting is that in 1991, as they began to the expansion of NATO, they didn't justify it by, well, Russia might come back, and the way that Bill Clinton had to explain himself as to, well, why did you do this? And he said, well, we had to worry about, you know, maybe Russia will come back. That's not what they said. What they said is that we have these new military missions, humanitarian intervention. We're these really great guys, you know, we're so good. We want to save the world, you know, all sorts of humanitarian crises. You know, there are horrible people trying to do terrible things to nice women and children, like the Serbs. We need a NATO for that. And so that was the invention for, you know, and the justification for this new NATO. Oh, we're trying to rescue damsels in distress. But they never said it was because, oh, Russia might come back.
Another rationalization. This is remarkable. I mean, I saw this at a security conference. We had to expand NATO into Eastern Europe to to ensure stability between governments and militaries.
What was that?
I remember Stephen Cohen was still alive. I'm trying to remember where he was when but I mean, even Stephen Cohen was just like, you've got to be kidding. You know, I mean, it's on the same level. Well, we have for child literacy. We need NATO for child literacy. Yeah,
that's right. That's right. Yeah. And they're still peddling this nonsense because they have to, because they have to get these green types, these Annalena Baerbock types on board. And while she's, you know, she can be relied on to be, you know, passionately Russophobic, but you get other people and say, well, why do we need NATO? Well, you know, gay rights. You're for gay rights, aren't you? Yeah. Well, we have to protect LGBTQ rights. Oh, really? How do you do that? Well, because there are all these bad guys everywhere threatening LGBTQ rights, and then that NATO is going to be protecting. Okay.
That's why they might have forced regime change in Georgia.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. You know, and that's how you get these liberal do-gooders on board, right? Well, you know, you believe in gay marriage, don't you? Yeah, sure. Well, gay marriage is under threat in Georgia. What, you mean a gay person can't marry another gay person? Yeah. Well, yeah, count me in. You know, let's start bombing. So that's how they do it. It's deeply dishonest. It's a deeply dishonest enterprise. And because, you know, the media are on board, and of course this week they're going to be, you know, singing the praises of this wonderful, brilliant, great military alliance. But I think slowly it's going to get through. I mean, you know, it's just going to take time for people to realize that this is a bad news.
Well, you know, the smart money would show this is all Biden's doing. I know this is hard because, you know, we have the War Party, we have the Uniparty, but it's speak now and you'll be remembered for being on the right side of history, okay? Because we're in a car wreck right now, slow motion car wreck. We're all watching it, okay?
That's right.
And we're telling, and George and I are telling you this is going to end very badly.
Right, that's right. So Lynn asked again, you know, something that we talked about a moment ago. Do you think Orban is going to meet Trump during the NATO meeting? I don't think it'll be during the NATO meeting, but it is possible that he's going to, you know, he's a very energetic fellow. I can see him getting on a plane, flying down to Mar-a-Lago and talking to Trump. I mean, just in order to antagonize the Biden administration all the more. Hey, I'm toddling off and having a chat with my good friend Donald. So I can see that happening.
Well, I could see it because who's in Washington is going to want to talk to Viktor Orban? No one.
No one.
No.
Yes. Anyway, James says, unfortunately, mainstream media has still a stranglehold on the 99% of people. Yeah. Do you think that's true, Peter?
No, because I think what's really interesting, what's going on, is that you're getting more and more people tuning out from the mainstream. It's give an example. Who won the Oscars last year? I don't know. Who won the year before? I don't know. Why should I even care?
Yeah.
Okay. And I think more and more people feel that way. I mean, so George Stephanopoulos, a Democratic Party functionary, flunky,
Yeah.
he, from the Clinton administration, he's interviewing the presumptive Democratic nominee. Why would I waste my time on that? Okay.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, it's such it's kabuki theater. It is performative art. It
Right.
has nothing to do with anything that's meaningful. And I think more and more people, I mean, every time you hear somebody getting fired that's somehow associated with the mainstream media, it's like, woo, now you got a ticket. You're going to make some real money right now. I mean, it's happening all around us.
Right.
Okay. So,
but no,
I think, the thing is that it's really hard to figure out what people think. Pollsters, I've done questionnaires before. You can get any result you want. Okay.
Right.
It's how you write the questions. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
How many people, particularly conservative people, somebody calls them, I don't want to talk to you. Fuck off. I don't want to talk to you. Okay. Yeah. You can't figure out what a lot of these people actually think anymore.
Yep. I agree. And I think it's the very fact that Trump has he prevailed after the January the 6th events, when a lot of people, even I wasn't sure that he was actually going to survive the barrage of attacks that came after January the 6th. The fact that he's now in this position with a very good shot at winning in November, in spite of this relentless mainstream media hostility. And again, even in France, I mean, the French mainstream media were absolutely united against National Rally. I mean, it's even more, one-sided and relentless in its hostility than the American mainstream media. And again, despite that, and National Rally has been making steady progress. So its grip on the public is loosening. But that's not to say they still have a lot of power. I mean, I think
they have a lot of, but see, that's just the point. And just think about it this way: you have in the United States 2 major political parties, corrupt to their core, both of them, in my opinion. Okay, you have academia that is completely monopolized by these liberals. Okay, you have media; they have almost you have entertainment, almost universal control. Okay, another monopoly, and monopoly after monopoly after monopoly, and still the country is divided. That is a remarkable thing. With all that institutional power, and you still have a lot of people saying, I don't think so. Okay. Yeah. That's an interesting observation. Okay. I mean, with all the muscle they have and all the punishment they can met out to you, and still half the country, or maybe even more, we don't even know. Say no.
Yeah, no, that's right. And maybe something like that has happened clearly in the UK. I mean, that UK election is remarkable. You have a turnout of less than 60%. Keir Starmer, his majority in his own constituency goes down from 28,000 in 2019 to 7,000. This is the media have been completely in the tank with Keir Starmer. There's been almost no criticism at all. He's kind of beyond any kind of criticism, and despite that, Labour got fewer votes than he did under Jeremy Corbyn in 2019. It was just simply the Tories that collapsed. And again, Reform came under a lot of attacks. Were directed at
with no money.
Well, exactly. Now the one thing they're very good at doing, the media, which is ignoring you. If they just simply ignore you, then it's very, very difficult to make any kind of headway. And I think that's what they did with George Galloway, I think they just ignored him. I think they just gave no coverage at all to Rochdale, and I think that damaged him. They didn't even go to the trouble of attacking him. They just simply ignored it. So that hurts anyone when the mainstream media just pretends that you don't exist.
Well, we called it early on. When we talked about George Galloway's victory 58 days ago, it was probably short run. Okay.
Yeah.
Probably. Yeah. Because, I mean, the Labour candidate in his constituency completely collapsed. Labour basically abandoned it. And this time they put resources into it.
That's right. They put resources. And as we looked at that article in the Telegraph, we talked about it a few days ago, and they said, Israel wins. Whoops. Shouldn't have let that headline go through.
Yep, the mask fell off, didn't it?
Anyway, and Takfir says, Hunter says, come on, isn't it evident? Ursula von der Leyen, the unelected EU leaders are offsprings from fascist European families. Trump Anglo and his mother was an illegal immigrant. We have guns. Well, there's no question that there are many figures in German politics, particularly among the Greens, whose grandfathers and great grandfathers had played a quite a prominent role, shall we say, in the Nazi era. And this is the case of Annalena Baerbock, the case of Robert Hasbeck. Now, obviously, you can't blame the sins of the grandfathers and the great grandfathers on their offspring, but the least one can say is you want to be careful if you have that kind of a family history before you start spewing out this pathological Russophobic ranting that particularly the Greens go in for.
A very nimble answer, George.
Yeah, thank you. And then Valerie, always good to see you. Valerie says, yes, NATO needs to be dissolved once and for all for the sake of humanity. I think, for the sake of humanity. That's very well put. That's exactly what's needed. So let's take a look at some comments people have made through YouTube, which, I mean, people have been quite prolific. Go right to the beginning.
Well, I take exception. I look like a certain Bavarian chicken farmer.
Really?
I don't. Okay.
Oh, I know who the Bavarian chicken farmer is. Okay.
Well, I give you points for knowing a Bavarian chicken farmer, and that's the.
Well, I think when you said about the chicken farmer, that's I kind of figured to whom the reference was. The problem was that it's like everybody who has those kinds of glasses now gets referred to. Oh, you look just like the chicken farmer.
Who do I look like now?
That's much better. Yes, the trouble is that actually make that's a bit, to me, that looks kind of goofy. I mean, I actually prefer the other pair, but.
If I neutralized it.
That's better. That's good. Yes. And so Meg Gallucci, yo from Baltimore. It's good we have people in Baltimore. Tony Spear says George's usual great self on moats. So I was on George Galloway's show yesterday evening. So thank you very much, Tony. So let's see here. And then here we'll get so, we have people from various parts of London. We have people in London. Mercurio Fulcanelli says Boris used to be a fun clown, but then he turned evil too. Yeah, I never really liked him much. Even in the days when he was the mayor of London, I always thought he was there was something always rather creepy.
Well, he was like a frat brat.
Yeah. And then, like many people, I mean, what happened in 2019, he kind of was swept up by the Brexit enthusiasm. I mean, first of all, he was always an insincere Brexiteer. He kind of battened onto that, entirely opportunistically, pushed aside Farage, so suddenly Boris Johnson became the leader of the Brexit movement, which he never was before. And then 2019, and then it was, this was the right-wing populist victory in the election. And then, of course, he quickly abandoned all of that, became a vaxxer, a masker, COVID lockdowner. And as you pointed out yesterday about the inner femininity, he got in touch with all of that. The inner green, he became green and everything. Just embraced entirely the intellectual agenda of the kind of London cocktail party circuit that I think he rather belongs. So he kind of invented himself, as the British Trump. Was always a fake. Like everything about him was always been a fake.
And George, what he likes to do more than anything else is make money.
Yes, what he likes to do above all is make money, and that's what he's doing now. He's making an awful lot of money.
Too.
He's very good at it. He's very good at it. I mean, he's good at doing tabloid journalism, which isn't a great skill. I mean, not everyone can do it, but it's still tabloid journalism. I mean, it's just a way of ranting, and raving, once or twice a week, making an awful lot of money on it. But it's not. It's a low-level skill, and it's particularly low-level skill because the newspapers you write for already have the template laid out for you. So all you have to do is actually write your copy, and they just put it into that template so that it looks very sort of screw them and so on. But it's not like that's how you write. It's just they already have that template ready to go.
Well, I mean,
it really is a low-level skill.
I don't know if the reports are true, but Boris Johnson apparently agreed to be interviewed by Tucker Carlson for $1 million.
He asked for $1 million. That's what Tucker said. Yeah, he asked for $1 million. I mean, that was Tucker's claim. I don't think he'd be lying. I mean,
no. Okay.
I mean, it was Tucker.
Yeah, but it was also, Tucker's going to interview Zelensky, and then that was scuttled. So.
That surprised me. That I thought that was surprising. That because I thought Zelensky would do it. It's interesting why it fell through. Did somebody get to Zelensky?
Well, has Zelensky ever been challenged on the ridiculous comments he's made over the last 2.5 years, ever since his presidency? He's never had a confrontational interview, not that I've seen anyway.
No, I haven't. The most was when Brett Baer asked him about Azov. And about the Nazi, and he didn't answer it terribly convincingly.
They are what they are.
Yeah,
they are what they are.
Yeah, that's right. But it's I don't think Tucker would have gone to and declared that this interview is on unless there had been some agreement. So it sounds to me like
or maybe
on the agreement.
Zelensky's handler said no.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. Now, if Johnson asked for $1 million, I wonder whether Johnson did it in order to get out of the interview, because he can't have believed that he's going to get $1 million for sitting down with Tucker.
I agree with you. I agree with you completely. It was just to fob him off. It's like no.
Okay. Right. But it's interesting that Johnson didn't want to do it. Because again, this would have been he would have been challenged. He would have been asked to explain, himself. He would have, why are you doing what you're doing?
Yeah, and it probably would have increased Tucker's subscriptions. The algorithm would be very friendly to him, so Tucker would maybe make $1 million off of it. Okay, but Johnson, where's my part? Doesn't work that way.
Right, but I think Johnson had agreed before. I think when Johnson visited Washington, apparently, again, according to Tucker, he had agreed to be interviewed by Tucker. Then again, he reneged on that interview, and then he went to some, I don't know, Heritage Foundation or whatever, and then said, "Well, who is this Tucker Carlson that everybody's talking about and everybody's afraid of?"
Brat.
Yeah. 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 Um, and anyway, so we have um, uh, um, then Tony Spear says the EU is a bastion for make it up as we go along, rules-based Western order democracy.
That's for sure. That's for sure.
That's pretty
But see, what they do is, I mean, this is how maniacal it is, because catastrophe is, or when things are going wrong, going south, this is always an opportunity for them to grab more power. They
Yes.
always do it, no matter what the,
Yeah.
crisis facing the EU, they grab more power, more
Yeah.
power.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's right. It's always an opportunity for
never reverse.
No, no,
Maybe we
no.
got to decentralize this thing. Maybe we should let democracy take hold. No, whenever things start, and this is something that gives them oxygen. Okay,
Right. Yes,
Ukraine for NATO. Oh, what a boon! Okay,
yes,
finally, we have a reason to exist.
Yes,
because we created an enemy called Russia, which we didn't need to, but it's real.
That's right. That's right. And so it becomes an excuse. So like the pandemic becomes an excuse for mass censorship. And then again, there's war, again, an excuse for mass censorship. And so you can't say, well, hey, you're shutting down people's comments. And say, no, it's because of Russia. Russia, Putin's poisonous propaganda. Russia is controlling, the discourse. How is it doing it? They never explain. They just say, it's Russia. Everything is Russia. I saw today a story. I think it was in the Guardian, and it was about the French election, and he said Putin can't be very happy with the result. What do you think? But I think, what? Do you have anything to say about the election? Well, Putin. That's it. You go to the Putin. I'm still surprised why the whole issue of Biden and Biden's failing physical and mental prowess. How come Putin hasn't been brought into the subject? But that somehow either Putin is causing the illness or Putin is.
Well, I think is that it'll come out. Is that for somehow. It may remain a secret for the end of time, but Trump was using Havana syndrome against Joe Biden, but Trump wasn't aware of it.
That's right.
Okay.
Yes.
He was a useful idiot. He was unaware that he was actually sending out this debilitating signal against Joe Biden. Okay?
Right.
It was Havana syndrome that really made the difference in the election.
Yes.
Okay? I think somebody is going to pick up on this, and they're going to run with it. Believe me.
Yeah, no, I think so, and I think that with that story about the cheap fakes, you saw the next step after the cheap fakes is that Russia is behind the cheap fakes, but then the debate caused such complete consternation and anxiety among Democrats that you couldn't go with the cheap fake story. Otherwise, we'd still be blaming on Russia, and it could still happen that that the whole thing, we'll get back to Russia. Anyway, we have the Peter Stone says the West Bank is likened to Germany in World War II, with the settlers as the brown shirts murdering and lynching and stealing the homes of Palestine citizens, with the police and the IDF egging them on. Very sad. Yeah, I don't know who's likening them, but
well, it's the same behavior. It is when the you have to understand that one of the pillars of a modern nation state is the state has the right to use the legitimate use of force.
Right.
Okay, the police. Okay.
Right.
And the police are supposed to enforce the law and to protect citizens. But if, as the legitimate instrument of using violence, it is used illegitimately,
right,
then what we're seeing on the West Bank is that exactly what we're seeing.
Well, I think so, and I think it's particularly problematic is that you have those UN Security Council resolutions that all of which say that this is occupied territories. I mean, this is all right, from ever since Resolution 242 in 1967. This is occupied territories. Well, that's very strictly forbidden under the Fourth Geneva Convention, which is you cannot start making settlements, building settlements on occupied territory. And Israel has done this and continued doing this, and then presenting essentially this as a fait accompli and say, well, we built so many settlements now, we can't really just tear them down without causing a humanitarian crisis, which is
and Dershowitz, it's unfortunate.
It's unfortunate. I was kind of amusing that Dershowitz says that he was involved in the drafting of Resolution 242, and of course Finkelstein kind of does, how were you involved in any of that? And then he said you even got it wrong about Lord Carrington. It was Lord Caradon. But also it's so strange because according to Dershowitz, for all he claims that although the settlements, I've never been in favor of the settlements, but Dershowitz denies that that it's illegal. He's always denied that these are illegal. So I have no idea how he kind of puts all these things together. I mean, Dershowitz just sort of talks.
No, it's one of these things that, and George and I've talked about this before, even before what's going down in history as October 7th. You have like Ben Shapiro and you have Alan Dershowitz. Shapiro can talk about a lot of issues that I'd say, yeah, I agree. Yeah,
right,
yeah,
right.
Good point. Good, right. Rational. And Alan Dershowitz, when I was still, during the Tucker days, I was still watching Fox, and when Dershowitz was given a decent interview, meaning not with Sean Hannity, he said things that were very interesting. And I've always found these people, they just have this huge blind spot. It's Israel. That just scrambles their faculties. Okay, on most other issues, you might agree or disagree, but I can see where you got that. Okay, but then when it comes to this one issue, it's bizarre.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, that's very much the case with Dershowitz, and so. Now, Peter Stone asks, do you think that Sunak was told to hold elections early to stop the pro-Palestinian independence, to organize themselves, and to throw it to stop George Galloway in his tracks? I don't know. I mean, I do think that Sunak may well think that a war is coming, whether it's a war in Russia, more likely, or maybe a war against Iran. He doesn't see himself as a wartime prime minister, and it may be that powerful figures in the UK also didn't think that he's a wartime prime minister. He's obviously he lacks any ability to relate to the British people, to lead the British people. I mean, everything about him. It's not just his Indianness, and he's a practicing Hindu, but he's he was a public school boy. He went to Oxford, made a ton of money on a hedge fund. There's just nothing about him. So if you're thinking about a war, you're not going to have Rishi Sunak as your wartime leader. So I can see that. He just wanted out. He made to win this election. I mean, he made no attempt to fight this election. So you have to think he wanted out.
I never took any interest in him at all. Okay, no. I'm sorry. All right, and it just seems to me, and this is just me, very far away. Okay, it's just like, well, what else can I do? Well, maybe I'll do politics for a while. Okay.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Well, if I'm in politics, I want the top job. So I got the top job. So this is what it is.
Right.
All these people around me in my own party that are just imbeciles. Because they are. They're just complete imbeciles.
Yes.
They're the social butterflies, gossip. The most useless people you could ever meet in your life. And he's probably said, I've done that. And his wife says, we haven't been to the Caymans in a long time. Well, all right, I'll call elections. Okay, all right. It'll be in 2 weeks. Well, make the reservations. We're out of here.
No, I think so. His whole life has been the kind of, he moves up this sort of the success ladder. He's always, he was at Winchester, which is a very academically powerful, in terms of the public schools in England. It was always the most academic was always Winchester. He did very well in Winchester. He was the head boy in Winchester. Then, he went to Oxford, did well at Oxford. Then he went to the Stanford Business School. Again, very hard to get into Stanford Business School. He got in, married a billionaire's daughter. So his whole life just goes from one success after another. And then, of course, he failed completely as prime minister because he lacked any of the qualities needed.
Right.
Prime minister. So he said, yeah, well, what do I need this for? And he's going to go back and make a ton of money. I mean, this is, he knows how to do that, and his wife knows how to do it.
He had a good Rolodex going into the job. Can you imagine what it is now? And plus, all of his connections with the intelligence services, he can call in favors, okay? Or, I got a friend of mine, he's got a small problem over here. This is how it works, okay? That's what the Blair people do. That's what the Gates people do, Soros, okay? What they're troubleshooters and fixers. That's what they do. And then they have fancy offices with nice furniture and pretty girls, and their little uniforms and all that. Yeah. But nothing is done there. That's just for show, okay? Yes. It's all power brokering, okay?
That's right. But,
they do Davos every day.
Yeah. Anyway, where are we? So Dead Man Walking asks when I don't know. Actually, I don't understand that. So
okay, looks like somebody's talking about being a plumber. Okay.
Wait. No, because I'm thinking, well, my dad was a tool maker.
Oh, that one again. I saw that clip that you keep making references to. Oh, I feel sorry for the people of the UK. That guy is.
Yeah, imagine having this guy there. He's gonna be there at least another 5 years. That's your prime minister. And the thing is, when he made his kind of maiden speech to the British people on Downing Street, he was looking at his notes. I mean, imagine you're making a speech, and I don't know how many times. I think Nigel Farage gave some estimate on how many times he looked down on his notes. I mean, you can't, after all these years in politics, you can't just speak from the heart. Just make a 10-minute speech without looking at your notes.
It's the juxtaposition. I think I've mentioned this before, but George Galloway, I mean, the master of all masters. Right. Okay. And I was at that Julian Assange event in 2022, I think it was. Mm-hmm. And no paper. Yeah. He had no idea what he was going to say until he got up to the lantern, and he bellowed one out, and it was he hit it out of the park. Sorry for the sports metaphor.
Yeah. That's right. So David Kay says, Alistair Crook this morning on Judge Napolitano's show had some very chilling predictions of Netanyahu coming to Washington in 2 weeks to convince the U.S. to join Israel in a war on Iran. Well, I'm sure he's going to try that. The question is, will these plans succeed? And normally I'd say no. Of course, he won't succeed. I'm not sure that he won't succeed. We're still thinking about it in terms of an election, and whether an election might be postponed or something could happen to prevent that the something that the deep state deeply doesn't want, the return of Trump. So I can see something like a war with Iran.
George, I mean, all bets are off right now. Okay, this is where we are. Here's a trajectory for you. Here, I'll build a case. Jake Sullivan, Anthony Blinken, their days may be numbered.
Yep.
They may be numbered.
Yep.
And by the way, the commander in chief, they just delivered a new box of diapers for him. Okay.
Right.
And Netanyahu is saying, like I think Netanyahu has always thought, he said, this is an opportunity. Okay. Right. And this is something that, Blinken and Sullivan, this is something they've salivated, it's because we can solve, listen to this, everybody, we can solve all of our problems at the same time.
Yeah.
This is how these people think. They're going to say, look, all right, this administration is going down the tubes and really quick. So while we have the time, let's take advantage of it. I'm serious. This could be part of their calculation. Everybody's absorbed with, the guy that's drooling in the Oval Office. Meanwhile, what's going on? Okay. That's what keeps me up at night.
No, I quite agree. I mean, anything could happen. And again, because of this election and everything, whether some way of changing the equation. So
Trump, I just hope you have your own private security. Don't rely on
David Kay says, if Trump wants to end the Ukraine war, he has to do so immediately. I agree. After taking office, so that the loss can be attributed to Biden. If he waits, it will become Trump's loss. Yeah, absolutely right. I think, if he continues any time after January the 20th, it'll be Trump's war. And then, if he tries to abandon Ukraine, Trump betrayed Ukraine. That's all the attacks will be, Trump.
Yeah, but I mean, something as bold as this, if he's elected, I want before December 31st, an international conference. The Russians are going to be there. I'm going to get them there. I'm going to get the Ukrainians there. I'm going to get China there. I'm going to get everybody there. Okay, that's what he would he succeed at doing? I don't know.
Yeah, but that's exactly. That's what he should be doing.
Have to do.
Yep. I agree.
People keep placing hope in the system offered them. It's a very interesting observation because I've often, we were given, if we use the Overton window metaphor, everything is controlled on what you can talk about, and you're absolutely right. And this is something that George and I are very frustrated about, because we're fanatics for language. Far right, the far right's pouncing. Okay, we see the same rhetoric all of the time. Okay? And what it does is it confines how you look at an issue, and that's all intentionally.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right, and I think that's why they coined that term far right, because obviously it's pejorative and it suggests extremism, and that's it's very, very, very important. All the far right, and as we said before, all the people that they lump into this category of far right, they don't really have a great deal in common with one another. But it's but it helps to see the far right is on the march. They don't have any evidence of this, but the far right is on the march.
But it's only the far right that ever goes on the march, right? I mean, because obviously they're trying to conjure up, boots, boom, boom. But it's liberals that do that.
That's right. The funniest of all is when they, particularly when they have Hungary and Poland, Hungary and not, anyway, that far right government in Poland has gone. But then there was always saying, the far right in Poland, far right in Hungary, but they took diametrically opposed positions on Russia and Ukraine. So what is the point of lumping them together when they basically take, the most important issue of our time, they take diametrically opposed views. And so secret societies and their oligarchs, as shown in Northwest. I like that. Secret societies and their oligarchs.
Well, it's not so secret. A lot of this is just done in broad light.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I see that the Peter looks like a certain Bavarian chicken farm.
Well, I've changed my glasses 3 times.
Yeah. No,
the glasses.
That's but those glasses that you're wearing now, they're more like an intelligence chief. If you're, it's like if you're a head of the CIA, that's the kind of glasses that I would expect.
I can't turn my camera. I'll end up breaking something. But I have about 60 pairs of glasses, so I could probably eventually satisfy the person that is liking me to a chicken farmer. I've been doing this for a long time, and I've been called everything you could imagine. Okay, and it doesn't.
Right.
I don't care.
But it's an interesting notion because when somebody wears kind of striking glasses, that can really make a character. So, like in that great film, The Sweet Smell of Success, with Burt Lancaster plays that J.J. Hunsaker. He wears these glasses, and it gives him a really sinister look. I mean, it's very important you give these that sinister look. So absolutely, glasses can absolutely give somebody a real presence. And even with the chicken farmer, I mean, ever since that chicken farmer, those rimless glasses have always have given that there's a sinister quality.
Yeah, but John Lennon wore them, and he didn't have that. Yeah,
that's true. Yes, I'm thinking. Valerie, thank you so much for your generosity. Really appreciate it. Thank you for being here so early. Thank you so much. George Bush Jr. was too Douglas Miller. I think he was talking about a frat boy. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah. And yeah.
Am I an AI designed by the Soviets? No. I wasn't a fan of the Soviet Union. It's very interesting because I lived in Poland in the 1980s, and I actually got to know a lot of people that worked at Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty. I had correspondence with them for a long time, and then things started to diverge. And one of the last messages I had with, I won't give the name, but he's a pretty well-known person there. He said, Peter, you've lost your way, but no one can doubt your anti-communist bona fides. And I thought, okay, that's fine.
No, I think so. The thing is, though, about the Soviet Union is nonetheless that in retrospect, so much of what Russia now claims as its accomplishments were actually built on the foundations established by the Soviet Union. So leave aside like the space program, leave aside the Soviet education system, which was a very high standard. But let's say Russia now boasts of its excellent relations with the Asia and Africa, and we supported the liberation struggles. And when Putin says that we did this, he is establishing the basic continuity between Russia and the Soviet Union, where at least in the kind of Yeltsin years, Russia just distanced itself, where we have nothing in common with the Soviet Union. So it's kind of interesting that, no fan of the Soviet Union, but the same time, so much of today's Russia, however, says it's based on the foundations laid by the Soviet Union.
I don't disagree with you. And one of the things I like about living here, history is looked upon as linear. Okay, so they had the imperial time, that they had the revolution, they had the Civil War, there was the Stalin terror, then there was Khrushchev's era of the Cold War, and then it came to an end. And one of the things that I've always said to people, and sometimes I'm misunderstood, is that you keep what was valuable, what worked, okay, and then other things that didn't work, okay, so you let that go, but it's all linear. Okay. There's no passion to tear down statues. They've taken down some of Lenin's statues, but there were a lot of them here. Okay. But it was a lot of Lenin statues in the Soviet Union. And they've taken down some of them to put up different statues or put up a building or something like that. But there's no attempt to erase Lenin because he's part of this history.
Part of the history.
And you can see Stalin's I guess his tombstone, put it that way.
It's still next to the Kremlin.
You can go see it. Okay. They didn't dispose of him historically. And also, what do people think about Stalin? I get that question all the time. And I said, well, on a daily basis? Nobody's thinking about him. Nobody. Okay. But you might think about him indirectly every single day when you look at the architecture, because people say that's a Stalin building. Okay. It's big. It's big. Okay.
It's big.
It's big. And it's got thick stones. Okay. Big ones. Okay.
That's
and soaring to the sky. And some of them are very interesting. Just a piece of trivia for everyone. They have these Stalin skyscrapers, and they're quite visible. And so attractive in a certain way, but many of them were built by German prisoners of war after May 1945. Because they got a lot of their engineers from the Wehrmacht, and they were good at building stuff. They said, "You're going to build that for us, okay?" And that German, grit paid off, because these buildings are still there, and having an apartment in one of those buildings, pretty top drawer. Okay, they're big. The ceilings are really high. So
no, that's right. It's also interesting when Putin, I think, recently referred to him as Josef Vissarionovich. So it's kind of in a very respectful sort of way, Josef Vissarionovich, almost like a kind of a familiar figure at the dinner table. Well, as Josef Vissarionovich would say. Anyway, Steve K9 says, Netanyahu on the United States. So I think he's quoting Netanyahu. If we get caught, they will just replace us with persons of the same cloth. So it does not matter what you do. America is a golden calf, and we will suck it dry, chop it up, and sell off piece by piece until there's nothing left. But the world's biggest welfare state, and we will create and control. Why? Because it is the will of God, and America is big enough to take the hit. I don't know whether Netanyahu said that, maybe that's kind of what he thinks. But you have to wonder, though, this address to the joint houses of Congress, it's kind of an extraordinary thing for Israel and the Israel lobby to have pulled off. I remember it was just a few months ago when you had Chuck Schumer saying Netanyahu must go. We had Nancy Pelosi, Netanyahu must go, and then you had the administration making all these anonymous comments about how sick and to death they were of Netanyahu. Quite extraordinary to pull this off. you know, that of having this joint session. I bet most members of both houses will be there. I mean, there'll be some. I'm sure Bernie Sanders won't be there, but I bet most of them will be there.
Of course they'll be there, and it will be one of the most devastating acts of negative soft power in history.
Yeah.
You know, I had lunch with a Lebanese woman this afternoon, and you know, not only did she tell me that, because she's an expert in the Arab Middle East, and she said, Russia, they love Russia. They love Russia. She said, we can disagree all across the region about so many things, but one thing we all agree on, how much they love Russia. And then she asked me, so what do you think the impact will be with Netanyahu's address the joint session of Congress? I said, it's the most devastating thing you could possibly do for the world. I'm not inside the Beltway, no, but for the world, the ICC, the ICJ.
Yeah. But the interesting thing with the ICC is that arrest warrant that still hasn't been issued. You know, so you got all the public.
Yeah, well, I hear it's the British government. I don't know what you heard.
What did you hear?
The British government's meddling in it.
Right, but it hasn't been issued. I mean, the prosecutor said, "Well, I'm going to go and seek an arrest warrant," but it hasn't happened. In the case of the Russian officials, that was just automatic. He issued these arrest warrants, but he said he was going to apply for an arrest warrant. No arrest warrant. So that's.
I see. I love Dima. Bring in Babbage. We love Dima.
Exactly. Absolutely. We're gonna have him back. All right, Peter. I think we've been going for quite a while, and I know your dogs are getting impatient.
It's pretty hot today. They're sleeping.
Yeah, and they're also getting.
Let me show Apple to everybody. Wake up.
Yeah, he's absolutely drained. I mean, because like I've been sleeping hour after hour, and it just really knocks you out when you're sleeping all the time. I mean, it's hard to you really
look at those eyes.
Gives a new meaning to the word tiredness. I mean, it's like he's it's just such.
Well, what happens is I have this bag that I carry, and I put it around me, and so it's a pouch, and there's a zipper so he can get up to his neck here. But what he does is he likes when I open up the bag a little bit, and he puts his paw out like this, and he's so aristocratic. I'm like his Sherpa, and I'm carrying him around. He just loves it. Okay, and he'll fall asleep as long as he knows I'm holding him. He feels safe enough to fall asleep. Okay, like he is right now.
Right. But I guess it's something that he's trained himself to do, which is to fall asleep all the time. I mean, he's kind of done that. He's very good at it. You've mastered the craft of falling asleep. I mean, this is what he's very good at doing. But anyway, thank you very much, everybody who has joined us. Thank you. Appreciate all your comments and questions. We didn't get to all of them because it's very hard to get to all of them. But we appreciate the time you've taken with us, and we will be back same time next Monday. Tomorrow, Tuesday, 3 p.m. Eastern time, I'm going to be doing a live stream solo. Apple isn't going to be there. Hey, that's way past my bedtime. But please join me. And we'll continue with this conversation. Until then, goodbye. Good luck. See you then. Well, seemingly it's not ending, so I'm going to just have to
bye.
Bye. Exactly.